I really do like Denise and Martin together in in the show, in the Cosby Show, especially since Martin's a naval officer. I used to be a naval officer, so I have like an understanding. I think when I was younger, I didn't really pay attention to the fact that he was a naval officer. I didn't think it mattered, but from my perspective now, it makes total sense why Denise would end up with a naval officer, and not even because her dad was a naval officer, but just because. And I'm gonna use certain numbers when I throw some certain data into this, but it's going to be for 2025 within the last 5 years, so 2020, 2025, not necessarily for back in the 80s and 90s, because I don't really know how much stuff was back then. I didn't do the research on that. I'm just going to, put it to this time, this day and age. But, Martin went to the Naval Academy. He graduated. And then when you graduate from the Naval Academy, you got to what? You owed him 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. So he did 4 years in the Naval Academy, owed him 5 years. Now, when we see um, Martin, he's already a lieutenant, so that's an 03. So that means he had to be in at least 4 years. So he either finished his, he had to be 4 years. And he was married already. He was married to Olivia's mom, right? And it makes total sense, right? Because I think he was an engineer. So that means he was either a surface warfare officer or maybe he was in nuclear or something like that. But he was doing something on the ship, either nuclear or he was a surface warfare officer, probably. But and that nuclear could have been subs, but I don't think it's subs because I don't think they say anything about submarines. But anyway, makes total sense to me that he would end up with another wife only because you have to buy in on the Navy. Like if you do he went to the academy, so he gave them their time back there 5 years. So he's an 03. Probably will make 04, make lieutenant commander. In other branches, you would call it major, like in Army, Air Force, Marines, Space Force, they call it major. In the Navy and the Coast Guard, they call it lieutenant commander. So he would make 04 probably by year 8. So if he's at year 5 or 6 now, he can make it at 7 or 8, probably make 04. Now, which at 03, your wife ain't working anyway because you don't need her to work. But definitely if you make 04, your wife ain't trying to work. But reason why I put this in perspective, when you're a naval officer and if you're going to make it a career, like after you do your first contract or whatever, you do your actual initial obligation, because it's not like enlisted where you have to like re-enlist. You're always an officer until you resign. So if you do your obligation, you could just get out. Resign from write the letter to Congress and say I don't want to be an officer anymore. Cool, that's all well and good. But if you do stay in, if you're single, not so such a big deal. If you are married, she has to buy in on you staying in, because the higher up you go, like if she wants a career, like it makes total sense to me now because Martin's wife wanted a career. She wanted to do stuff for herself. She didn't just want to be a mother and a husband. I mean, mother and a wife. Because if she wanted to be a mother and a wife and a stay-at-home mom, she could just stay with Martin. Because because he already probably did his initial obligation. Because for his job, he's going to be traveling a lot. She's going to have to travel with him. We see that when he's with Denise. Whenever he had to leave, she had to leave too, which isn't always the case, but that's majority of the time. I'm surprised they didn't take Olivia with them, but whatever. That's how they wrote it, right? That's how they wrote it. Anyway, well, if it's just a quick little 6 month thing, I see that. But if you're going somewhere PCSing for 3 months 3 years at a time, 2 years at a time, it makes total sense. They would probably take Olivia with them. But for like 6 months, 5 months, 9 months, I can see them leaving Olivia with the family or with her mother. But then her mother was going to school, so yeah. But anyway, makes sense because you got to buy in because you got to think about it. You got kids, you got a wife. If you're going to stay in the military as an officer, you're going to be making money, but your wife isn't going to be able to work unless she's working online. They didn't have that back then. She ain't going to be able to work. You moving every year or two, she ain't going to be able to keep a job. So she has to buy in on the military. Like if she doesn't buy in, you have to either get out or you're going to lose your wife. That's pretty much how it goes. Like at that point, especially she stayed with you, she was probably with him sometime in the academy. They got married. Then they stayed together for that first obligation, and then she was ready to go. She was like, probably told him. That's what happened with guys. Your wife is like, yo, you stay in. We can't be together because I want to do something too. I don't want my life to be surrounded by the military, whether Army, Air Force, Navy, whatever. They get past 03 and they're going to 04, 05, 06. If he wants to be an admiral, which is basically a general in another branch you would call it, an army you call it a general, he wants to be an admiral, You have to buy in on that because you're not going to have your own life. You're going to be a Navy wife. It's all about him. It's all about what he got going on. It's not about what you want. It's about what the Navy wants, where you're going to be at. You're going to be in Spain this year, right? You're going to be in Spain this year. 2 years from now, you're going to be in, I don't know, back in the States. A year after that, you might go to Hawaii, which is considered States too, but depends. And then after that, you might be in Japan. Just understand y'all gonna be moving, and your job is to be his moral support. That's the only job. Take care of home, be the moral support. If you can handle that, makes sense. But obviously, Martin's wife wasn't with it. She was like, "Yo, I can't do it." And maybe she thought she could do it until she realized she wanted more for herself, and she separated from Martin. Cool. But then you come Denise. Denise is with it because Denise was already like she wasn't sure what she wanted to do with herself anyway. And Martin is stable, so she like, okay, I'm gonna rock out with Martin. Cause and what she do? Whenever Martin left, she left with him. It was all about Martin. It was all about her kid. Yeah, she started going to school a little bit by the end of the series, but for the most part, it was about Martin. So you gotta think about it. A guy like him, he went to the academy. He's intelligent. He's an engineer. And maybe he don't. He wants to do that. Do his time, retire, and go do something else. Like if I use the numbers from like right now, 2025, like like there's bonuses. Like people forget because in the military you get based on how much time you've been in plus your rank plus your bonuses. So I'm assuming he's an O2. So right now, I mean O3. So right now you got O3s. I don't even know. I should look at the chart. But let's just say he's bringing in like if he's an O3, probably bringing in 80 to 100 grand. But depending on how many years he's been in. So 80 to 100 grand a year. That's just regular. That's just his base salary. That's not no incentives, no bonuses. That's just 80 to 100 grand, just flat. If this was 2025, if it was same scenario. Then you add on if he's going airborne, that's a 10 grand bonus. So you add 10,000 on that. If he's going to a hazardous event, right? Like he's going to be working somewhere hazardous. That's an 18 grand bonus a year. So if you're going to go somewhere to a hazardous situation where you're going to be around hazardous things, that's 18 grand added on to that. If you have a specific assignment, like there's a specific job they want you to do or go to a specific area, that is an extra 36,000 a year, but that's more like 3,000 a month. So yeah, it comes out to like 36 grand a year. If he was nuclear, I don't know if he was nuclear, but if he's nuclear, that's like 30K, but over like 2 years. So that's like a 30K bonus. If he's a a surface warfare officer, department head. So at his point, because I guess when he come out of the academy, he's not going to be a department head. But when he hits his 4 or 5 years, he's like, oh, we want you to be a department head. You're O3. That's a 50K bonus just right up front. 50K bonus for the next 2 or 3 years, or however long that department head assignment is. So if it's a year or two, that's 50 grand for that year or two. Add on to that. If it's a critical retention thing, like he wanted to get out, but they wanted to keep him in, they gonna give him up to 200K. Well, if he's active duty, it's like 200K. If he's reservist, it's gonna be like 100K. But these are all things that they give you on top of your salary because you can, people who like have military spouses or have military relatives, they know the bonuses is why people might stay in because they got medical care and all that. Cool. And your salary could be 8. If you look online, you'll see like, oh, person is getting paid on the first 15th. Their salary may be, if they're an officer, junior, middle officer, or whatever, salary may look like 80 grand, 100 grand, 60 grand, depending on how many years they've been. If you don't know how many years they've been in, that's another thing. But say it was 100 grand flat rate, then you don't think about the other incentives you're going to get. They're probably racking in over 200, especially if they've been in a good amount of time, at least 8 years. Especially if they've been in 8 to 10 years, they're going to be racking in like at least 200, 220, 230 a year, right? And then the bonuses is non-taxable. So that's another thing too. I said all the bonuses, right? They ain't taxable. They don't tax them. They only tax the actual salary. So so if 100 grand is your actual base salary, and you got another 100 or whatever so grand for the bonuses, not getting taxed. It's not taxable. It's non-taxable. So, so that's another thing. It's not like so getting paid 200K in the military, if the extra 100 isn't taxable, is way different than getting paid 200K as a civilian and everything is taxable, right? Anyway, so that's why I was like, yo, when you actually look at it, like, oh, that makes so much sense. Because Denise, she was cool with just being a wife, especially when we first see her come back from Africa and she's married. It makes total sense. Dude getting paper. Now, I don't, like, I understand the way they wrote it, why they lived in the Huxtable home, but in reality, it wouldn't happen that way. They would have ended up in Rhode Island. Yeah, they made it a switcheroo because it's a TV show and they made it so Denise didn't confirm the housing so they can live in Brooklyn. Which, getting from, think about this. How logical is it that he's stationed in Rhode Island and they're in Brooklyn, right? Because this is the thing that doesn't make any sense if you really want to look at it. Even if they didn't get housing on base, military people, majority of the time, don't want to live on base anyway. So what he would have just did, he would have just got an apartment or a house in Rhode Island. He's not going to drive. Think about it. You're in the Navy. He's an officer. If he's an engineer, he's on the ship all the time, every day. So if he's on the ship every day, you think he's going to live on the ship? Especially if he don't have to. If they're dry dock, they're in port. He's not going to live on the ship. So if he's not going to live in the ship, what is he going to do? He's going to get an apartment or get a house. Now, I understand I'm not getting a house because he can save money, but he's going to get a house. And I understand this is a show, so it's cool. They wanted to give a reason for Denise and Martin to be at the house. But in reality, he's in Rhode Island. So her, Denise, Martin, if this is a real scenario, Denise and Martin and Olivia would be in Rhode Island. And to be honest with you, Denise probably wouldn't have never went back to school. Why? Because he is bought in on his career. When an officer is bought in on their career, whether it's a male officer or a female officer, when they hit over that 03 mark, 04, especially 04, ain't nobody working. I know no military officer in any branch that is an 05 and a spouse work, male or female. Like I got girls I know that are officers still in the military. One is she's actually just she's an ensign. She's an 01. Her husband don't work. I know chiefs, Navy chief, who's been in 13 years. Her husband don't work. Enlisted, at higher senior enlisted, don't. Sometimes their spouses don't work. They can, it depends, but sometimes they don't work. But if you're an officer and you're a high ranking officer, your wife ain't working or husband ain't working because they can't, because they gotta buy in on your career because y'all move so much, so much going on. It's not about them. Heck, it's not even about you. It's about the Navy or the Army or the Air Force or Space Force or whatever you into. Once you hit a certain level, I think even on the enlisted side too, especially when you hit E7, hit a certain level, it ain't about, well, I don't know, this side might be a little bit different. I was enlisted, but I wasn't enlisted for like E7. I didn't make it to E7. But in general, yeah, as an officer, I was a junior officer, you have to make that decision when you hit that, when you hit your first 4 years or the end of your first obligation, you got to decide if you're going to stay or not, because your spouse, if you married, he or she is going to have to buy in. Okay, if you stay in, I know I have to, whatever I want to do, that's going to take a back seat. It's all about what you doing, because that's just what it is. So that's why I was like, dang, man, when I look at it from my perspective, I don't know who else was ever in the military, Army, Air Force, or Navy or anything like that. I'm a Navy guy, so this dude's a Navy guy. I get it, and he would make too much money to like be living at his folks' house, her parents' house. He's not doing that. I know I wouldn't do nothing like that. I'm getting me a crib, like, but we not living in Brooklyn and I'm in Rhode Island. You know, doesn't make any sense. The base is in Rhode Island, and I need to drive there, but I'm going to stay in Brooklyn, and I got to go to work every day. That's not a logical situation, right? I'm trying to think. I don't even know how far Brooklyn is um, to Rhode Island. You know? Oh, about 3 hours. I just looked that up. So 3 hours. So you got like 3 hours to go from Brooklyn to Rhode Island. So that's a 3 hour drive. What man or woman is driving 3 hours both? So 3 hours to get there, 3 hours back every day. And you got to deal with New York traffic. No, not happening. So, but again, it's a show. But like I said, for me, it makes total sense why Denise would end up with a guy like Martin. She needs stability. She was out here floating. She's a free spirit. She out here floating. Martin's not floating. See, that's why opposites attract. You know, opposites attract. And then Denise is a good person. She's good to be a mother. She's the motherly type. Cool. I think even Martin's first wife, when you see her at the Thanksgiving episode, she was a motherly figure. She loved her daughter, and I don't think, and you could tell her and Martin don't got no beef. It's not beef. He understood that she was not bought in on the military, so she had to go. And I mean, they gave a whole bunch of excuses, but she wanted to live her life. And she probably wanted to be a wife, but she didn't want to be going from place to place every other year. She wanted to go to school. She wanted to go to grad school. She wanted to go do this and do that. And she didn't want her life to be surrounded by Martin's career. Because in that scenario, it's needs of the Navy, needs of the Army, needs of the Air Force. Y'all could be somewhere, y'all told y'all gonna be there 2 years or 3 years, and then y'all leave in 6 months. It'd be like that. And she didn't like that uncertainty that, oh, we build something here, then we leave again. We build something here, then we leave again. That's not her thing. As well, Denise is a free spirit. She with it. Oh, we here today? We in Rhode Island tomorrow? Oh, we in Rhode of Spain? Oh, we over here in Italy? Oh, we over here in Japan? Oh, we over here in, I don't know, Abu Dhabi? We over here in Djibouti? Boom, 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 boom. Wherever we going, I'm with it. That's the kind of person Denise is. That's the kind of wife Martin needed. A woman that was comfortable. It'd have been dope if he had met her before he met his first wife. You know what I'm saying? If he'd have met her first, that'd have been even better because they could have had a clean slate. It would have been no baggage or anything like that. But she definitely needed somebody opposite of her that was more grounded. You can't put two free spirits together. That might not work. And maybe you could put two people that's grounded, but then that's the thing too. But opposites usually attract. You know, whatever you're lacking, your partner's gonna have, but whatever your partner's lacking, you have. That's kind of how it should go, or hopefully it goes. But in this scenario, I was like, dang man, it makes so much sense. Denise was a free spirit. She out here floating. She's okay with going to Africa, going over here, going over there. She's with it. And Martin is, he's with it too. He's grounded because he has a career. But officers or enlisted military people in general, we move from place to place to place. We got to be able to get up and go whenever possible. And we got to be able to do it in a short amount of time. So that's why I was like, yo, Martin and her was really matched made in heaven because, Martin has to get up and go for his job. And she's willing to get up and go because she loved him. And she bought it on the Navy. And it wasn't really that big of a stretch because her dad was in the Navy, even though I don't remember if they said, because I think Cliff was out the Navy by the time Denise was young. Because I think when Denise was a baby, if I'm not mistaken, they had a story in one of the episodes when who was it? Anna is Cliff's mom, was talking about, I remember when y'all was living over a trucking company and you were going to, I think he was in med school and she was pregnant with Sandra. So if he was in med school, right? He was in med school and and what the heck's her name? Claire was pregnant with Sandra. That means he was already out the Navy. He already left the Navy already. So that means he left the Navy before Sandra was even born. So obviously Denise wasn't born. So she wasn't around when her dad was in the military. But she might have heard sea stories because military dads always giving out sea stories to their kids. Oh, it's how I used to be living, blah, 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 blah. But she didn't live that life. But she understood her dad had a lot of ventures, you know. He had a lot of ventures in the military. So she was like, okay, cool. My dad was doing it like that. He got to travel the world. And that was the free spirit in her. Her being married to a Navy guy who goes from place to place. But it wouldn't matter if it was Army, Air Force, whatever. She was going to be with it anyway because she likes to travel. She wants to see the world. Even I remember the episode where even Sandra said it when Denise was trying to pick her school, like what school to go to, what college to go to, and she couldn't set her mind straight. Sandra was the one that was like, yo, I don't think she should go to school. I think she need to travel the world for a year. And everybody was like, what? To do what? She was like, to discover herself and all this other stuff. Nobody listened to Sandra either. But either way, that's neither here nor there. Fact of the matter is, Denise is a free spirit. She met another free spirit in a way, but he's more grounded. They merged. She bought in on the Navy, which, like I said, women have to do, or her spouses, men too. If your wife is in the military and Because most military women I know, their husbands don't work. They can't, especially the higher up you go. So you gotta buy it on the Navy, and if you buy it on the Navy or the Army or the Air Force, you gotta be able to pick up and go. And Denise was perfect for that. You know, the only thing that was off for me is that they was living in the Huxtable home. But we know why they did that, because it's a show, and it's funnier that way, and it makes more sense. Because in reality, they would have been living in Rhode Island, which is a 3 hour drive. It's not a big deal. I think that's it. Yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. I was like, yo, from my perspective, because I have a different background, like Denise and Martin actually are a match made in heaven, and it makes a whole lot of sense.